Hey guys, tonight we drift back through time, onto a creaking, foul-smelling pirate ship, where the air is thick with brine and rot. You're jolted awake on the blood-slick deck, the cries of the wounded drowning out the crashing waves. There's a man, barely a man anymore, splayed across a plank of wood, groaning through clenched teeth. One leg's half gone. You're holding a rusty bone saw, and everyone's looking at you like you're the solution, not the problem. You're not even wearing shoes. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop your location and local time in the comments. It's always cool seeing where in the world you're winding down. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge toward the man, whose eyes roll white as you kneel beside him. The deck shifts under you. The whole ship groans like a dying animal. You can smell tar, old rum, and something sharper, blood mixed with sea salt and fear. Your tools, if we can call them that, rattle in a little wooden box. A saw, a pair of grimy forceps, and a spool of thread you wouldn't trust for button repair. Welcome to your morning. The problem with being a surgeon on a pirate ship isn't just a lack of medical knowledge. It's that you're expected to fix things that probably shouldn't still be alive. This man in front of you? A cannonball took half his thigh. He's still conscious, somehow, mumbling about a girl in Tortuga. You try not to notice the bone gleaming through shredded flesh like white coral. And the rest of the crew? They're watching you like this is a circus act. Except that the act goes bad. You don't get booed. You get thrown to the sharks. Make it quick, growls the quartermaster. He's chewing tobacco and barely masking his disgust. He's lucky to be alive. You aren't so sure. You tear a strip from your already filthy shirt, make a crude tourniquet, and get to work. There's no antiseptic, no chloroform. You pour a shot of rum over the wound, more for show than science, and whisper a half-remembered prayer as the saw bites into bone. He screams so hard his voice cracks. Someone retches over the railing. You don't stop. There's no other surgeon aboard. You are it. You and your box of terrible ideas. And here's the kicker. This isn't even the worst part of your day. Because after you stop the bleeding, if you manage that, there's still dysentery to treat. A man with a fever so high, he thinks the sails are angels, and someone who tried to remove a musket ball from his own shoulder with a dinner knife. Historians still argue whether pirates took better care of their wounded than the Royal Navy. Some say yes, because they had to, in a brutal kind of way. Others think it was all posturing. But what's certain is that no one ever envied the ship's surgeon. You finish the amputation with a grunt and press a hot iron to the stump. The smell is something between burning meat and horror. The crew winces. You've got maybe 5 minutes before the poor soul bleeds out or goes into shock. You hand off the patient, now unconscious, and the men drag him below. You want to wash your hands, but the only water's the kind you drink. So you wipe your fingers on the deck. It makes a sticky sound. There's a joke going around the ship. They say if you wake up with all your limbs, it's a good day. If you wake up and you're the one doing surgery, it's probably not. You pass by a stack of crates, 2 of which house the medicine supplies. Mostly dried herbs, unlabeled jars, and one suspiciously green bottle of mercury. None of it's labeled correctly, of course. One bottle says syrup of figs, but smells like gun oil. Another says dog salve. You don't want to know what that is. The captain appears, still shirtless and sunburnt, rubbing his temple like the ship itself is giving him a headache. "How's Jenkins?" he asks. "Still breathing." You say, "Barely." "Good. He owes me money." This is how your day goes. Triage, barter, emergency amputations, a few arguments about ghosts causing fevers, and a whole lot of pretending you know what you're doing. The truth is, you were a barber back in London, or maybe a failed butcher. You boarded this ship to escape prison or poverty, or both. Now you're elbow deep in other people's misery. The sun climbs higher, and the deck turns to a frying pan. The stench thickens. Below, in the cramped hole with a wounded groan, flies buzz like a choir of tiny devils. You duck down there, checking on the man with the shoulder wound. It's red, angry, and oozing something you can only describe as not promising. You clean it, again with rum, and apply a paste of crushed garlic, and whatever's growing on the lemon peels you keep for scurvy prevention. The man swears you're trying to kill him. You smile and say, "Not yet." He doesn't laugh. Up top, the lookout shouts. Another ship on the horizon. Could be a prize. Could be the Navy. Either way, you're about to get more patience. You sigh and brace yourself. Somewhere deep in your brain, a thought surfaces. Drowning might be better than this. At least it's over quickly. There's no long, slow rot. No awkward apologies as you accidentally pull the wrong tooth. No endless nights of stitching and praying and hoping that the maggots are helping, not eating the poor soul alive. You head back above deck, squinting into the sun. You've got time to sharpen your saw before the next cannonball finds a new project for your shaky hands. And you wonder, not for the first time, how many more surgeries it will take before your own name gets added to the list of the formerly breathing. You weren't meant to be here. Not really. You were never supposed to be slicing off limbs on a boat where half the crew thinks leeches are a miracle cure, and the other half is already halfway dead. You remember that first day. You had a steady hand, a decent set of knives, and the grave misfortune of not fainting when someone cracked their skull open on a dock post. That was all it took. One pirate yelled, "He looks like he knows what he's doing." And now look at you. You were press-ganged into medicine. Not by the Navy, no. At least they had training and some semblance of a chain of command. Pirates? Pirates picked the surgeon the same way they picked the cook. Whoever looked least likely to drop something inside someone. You weren't a surgeon. Not really. You might have been a barber, or an assistant to a butcher's apprentice's cousin. But now, thanks to one regrettable moment of consciousness during an emergency, you're the only person on board with a knife that isn't just for stabbing. That makes you valuable. Kind of. "Oi, Doc," someone calls out. You hate when they call you that. He's holding out his hand, a rusted nail sticking out of his palm. There's already a halo of purple swelling around it. Pulled this from the mast. Hurts a bit. You nod like this is no big deal and lead him to your favorite operating table. A barrel that smells like pickled onions. You pour vinegar over the wound, because it's all you got that won't kill him immediately, and pull the nail free with the same set of pliers you used earlier on a cannonball-shattered shin. Multi-purpose tools. Love that. You wrap in an old cloth and mutter something about not using that hand for a while. He thanks you by spitting on the deck and walking off the dice with the others. You're not even sure he's left-handed. Your day continues with a blur of cuts, fevers, and one man convinces a sea which curses foot. You nod solemnly, apply a little lard mixed with pepper, and tell him it's an anti-witch salve. He believes you. It's terrifying how easy it is to play the expert when everyone else is superstitious and concussed. Back in England or France or wherever it was you started, surgeons had to train, sometimes even attend universities. Pirate ships, on the other hand, preferred someone with a steady hand and the patience to stitch skin that had been flayed open by a splinter the size of a broomstick. And if you said no, if you refused to take up the bloody mantle, well, the last guy who tried that ended up doing a different kind of cutting, namely fish guts, every day, until he accidentally fell overboard near a particularly enthusiastic school of sharks. You got the message. Pirate surgeons weren't respected. Not really. You weren't a hero. You weren't a man of science. You were a walking reminder that death is only one cannonball away. And worse, you were someone who might keep people alive just long enough to suffer. But still, the role came with certain perks. You got your own hammock. You got double rations, mostly because they didn't want you passing out mid-surgery. And, in theory, no one could kill you without a vote. But none of that stopped them from blaming you when a patient died. Historians still argue whether pirates respected their surgeons more than merchant crews did. Some believe the democratic nature of pirate life gave you more say, more security. Others insist you were just a necessary evil, tolerated, not trusted. And if too many people died under your knife, well, votes could go the other way, too. One sailor sits nearby, sharpening his cutlass. He has a large gash on his thigh that he insists is nothing serious. You glance at the wound. It's deep, infected, and probably 3 days old. Doesn't hurt, he says. It will, you reply. Give it 2 more days and your leg will look like moldy bread. He laughs. You don't. You try to convince him to let you clean it properly. He walks off instead. You know he'll be back. He always is, once the fever kicks in and his leg starts whispering secrets. The worst part is, you've started to keep a mental count. How many patients you've lost. How many you've saved. You're at about a 50-50 split. If you were a gambling man, you wouldn't bet on yourself. And then there's the little things. The way the captain glances at you when someone dies. The whispering among the crew when another sailor limps away from your table, looking more ghost than man. No one says it aloud, but they're thinking it. Is he keeping us alive, or just killing us slower? It doesn't help that your tools look more like torture devices than medical instruments. The saw's teeth are bent. The clamps are warped. The last time you tried to sterilize anything, it involved boiling seawater and a tin cup. You gave up when the wind knocked everything into the bilge. You once asked for new supplies after a successful raid. You got a bottle of cheap rum and a pack of moldy bandages. You used both, not because they worked, but because you had to use something. One time, a crewmate brought you a dead parrot and asked if you could fix its spirit because he believed it was watching over him. You buried it quietly and smeared a bit of red ochre on his forehead, muttering gibberish. He swore he could hear the bird again the next day. That story made the rounds. Now, half the crew thinks you're some kind of witch doctor. The other half thinks you're cursed. Honestly, they might both be right. There are moments, brief ones, where you forget how awful this is. Like when a wound actually heals. Or when a patient thanks you, not sarcastically, not under duress, but genuinely. One sailor even gave you a small carved idol once. Looked like a monkey. Said it was for luck. You've kept it ever since. Not because you believe in luck, but because hope is a scarce thing at sea. Even false hope has value when you're cutting into a man who hasn't stopped screaming for 20 straight minutes. You crawl into your hammock for a few hours of rest. Your back aches. Your hands are blistered. And your dreams? Filled with red. You dream of quiet rooms, white sheets, a clean scalpel glinting in a soft light. Then you wake to the thunder of footsteps and the smell of something burning. Someone's bleeding again. You sigh and rise, reaching for your saw. It's not even lunch yet. The heat below deck is unbearable. The kind of thick, soupy air that sticks to your skin like wet canvas and smells like unwashed feet, dry blood, and low morale. You duck your head to avoid the beams. Some genius carved a tally of lost limbs into one of them, and step over a rat chewing a moldy biscuit. The sound of shallow, labored breathing draws you toward your patients. Plural, always plural. One of them, Callum, is curled in the corner, face slick with sweat, clutching his belly like he swallowed a barrel of nails. He groans when he sees you. Hurts bad, Doc, he mutters, teeth gritted. Like fire in me guts. You kneel beside him, already suspecting what this is. His breath stinks of rot. His skin is pale, clammy, and his eyes dart around like they're trying to escape his skull. Probably dysentery. Again, you glance at the slop bucket in the corner, which hasn't been emptied since. Well, ever. Sanitation aboard a pirate ship isn't even an afterthought. It's more of a good luck, lad situation. You press your hand to Callum's stomach. He yelps like you jabbed him with a hot poker. No signs of a rupture. Yet, you send one of the boys to fetch water. Not because it'll help much, but because it gives everyone the illusion of treatment. Hydration buys time. Sometimes. You sit with Callum a while, fanning him with your shirt. His moans blend with the creaking wood around you. The ship feels like a coffin someone forgot to bury. There's a certain kind of horror in treating disease on a ship like this. Wounds you can see. You can cut, clamp, or burn them. But when the crew starts dropping from invisible enemies, fevers, coughs, watery bowels, that's when the real panic sets in. Historians still argue whether pirate surgeons understood the concept of contagion. Some point to ships quarantining the sick or burning bedding as proof of early disease control. Others think it was pure coincidence, or maybe just someone who hated laundry. You try to implement some rules. Don't eat with your hands after cleaning the bilge. No sharing cups with a guy who's been puking blood. Maybe wash occasionally. You'd think this would be common sense. But common sense is scarce when half the crew believes illness is caused by mermaid curses or drinking water that hasn't rested under the moon. You tried explaining germs once. A sailor asked if they were visible. You said no. He nodded solemnly and said, "Ah, so like ghosts." That was the end of that. You drag yourself topside for air. The sun blinds you instantly. Someone's singing an off-key sea shanty, and two men are punching each other for reasons neither will remember. You ignore it and check the rain barrel. Still half full. Good. You pour a bit into a crack bowl and mix in some charcoal and ground fennel seeds. It's not a cure, but it might soothe Callum's stomach. Maybe. Possibly. Definitely better than just letting him chew on a rope. You pass by another sailor, Jeffries, who's got a hacking cough that sounds like a cannon misfiring. You stop him and listen to his chest. Crackles. Could be the start of pneumonia. "You've been sleeping in wet clothes again?" you ask. He nods, smiling like a man who thinks wet clothes are some kind of charm. Keeps the lice away. You consider arguing, then remember the last time you tried to reason with him. He threw a dead crab at you. Instead, you hand him a glob of honey mixed with onion juice and tell him it's medicine. He grumbles but swallows it. It's a win. Kind of. At night, the real symptoms begin to show. The moans from below deck grow louder. Someone's crying. Someone else is praying to gods you've never heard of. You feel the walls closing in again. You try to rest, but every cough echoes like a gunshot in your skull. Then a new voice calls out, "Doc, wake up." It's Pierre. He's shaking like mad. You scramble out of your hammock and stumble down the stairs. Pierre's on the floor, limbs jerking wildly, eyes rolled back. You shout for help, grab a belt, and jam it between his teeth so he doesn't bite off his tongue. A seizure. You hold him down gently, wiping the sweat from his brow. The crew watches from the shadows, silent and pale. "What's wrong with him?" Someone whispers. You wish you knew. Could be fever. Could be worms in the brain. Could be that bottle of mystery tincture he drank last night after losing a bet. All you can do is wait it out. After what feels like forever, Pierre stops shaking. His chest rises and falls, slow and uneven. You sit beside him and wipe your hands on your trousers, which are now less cloth and more dried blood patchwork. Someone hands you a flask. You take a swig, hoping it's rum. It's not. It tastes like boot polish and regret. You've stopped asking what's in anything. By morning, 3 more crewmen are sick. One with red, weeping eyes. Another vomiting blood. A third just stares into space, humming the same tune over and over. You wonder if you're watching to start an outbreak. It's not the first time. Last year, you had something sweep through the ship that made men forget their own names. They wandered around like ghosts until they dropped. You tried everything. Leeches, poultices, even bloodletting. Nothing worked. You lost 7 in a week. The captain nearly threw you overboard, but decided you were more useful alive. Barely. You line up the sick and start separating hammocks. You steal cloth from the sails to make crude masks. You tell the crew to stay above deck, unless they want their lungs to fall out. They don't listen. Of course they don't. You sit beside Callum again. He's still alive. Somehow, his eyes flutter open. "You're still here," he croaks. You smile. Lucky you. He tries to laugh but chokes instead. You offer him some water and adjust his bedding. He looks better today. Maybe he'll make it. Maybe. You don't let yourself hope too hard. Hope has a bad habit of rotting out here. One sailor offers to help you. A quiet boy named Isaac who used to be a cabin assistant. He's got a steady hand, a strong stomach, and an unfortunate tendency to faint when people shout. You take what you can get. You show him how to wrap wounds, how to mix your makeshift medicines. And where you hide the good rum, it's under the sawdust crate, 3rd barrel from the left. He nods solemnly. You feel a tiny flicker of something, relief, maybe, or just the luxury of not being alone in this floating plague ward. As the sun sets, you stand on the deck, watching the horizon. The sea is calm for once. The sky bleeds orange and pink like a wound that's almost healing. You take a deep breath, trying to savor the moment. Then someone screams. Back to work. The screaming doesn't stop. You follow below deck again, At this point, you may as well set up a hammock in the sick bay. The stench hits you like a slap, all fermented sweat, spilled rum, pus, and despair. The source of the noise is Isaac. He's crouched beside a man whose leg is bent at an angle God never intended. The bone has snapped clean through the skin, jutting out like some angry ivory dagger. You wince and mutter a quiet curse. You've seen breaks before, but this one looks like it got into a fight with a cannonball and lost. The patient, Lemuel, a wiry old deckhand, gasps in pain. Fists clenched so tight they're almost purple. There's blood everywhere. The splinters in his leg are the least of your problems. This break won't set properly without surgery. And even if you try, infection is almost a guarantee. You try not to sigh too loudly. No one wants to hear the surgeon sound defeated. "Give me the bone saw," you say. Isaac's eyes go wide, but he nods. You see his hands shaking as he rummages through the surgical chest. Really just an old fish crate with some crude tools that still have crusted bits of someone's last unfortunate limb stuck on them. You clean the saw with strong rum. It's not sterile, but it's cleaner than most of the men. Lemuel's eyes meet yours. He knows what's coming. He doesn't ask if you're sure. He just grits his teeth and mutters, "Do it quick." You offer him a stick to bite down on and start cutting. There's no gentle way to describe the sound. It's like carving through salted meat wrapped around driftwood. You hum a sea shanty softly. Not for Lemuel's comfort, but to drown out the memory that you've done this too many times. About halfway through, Isaac faints. Not ideal. You keep sawing. When the leg finally comes free, Lemuel passes out mercifully. You cauterize the stump with a red-hot iron, the sizzle echoing to the hole like bacon on a skillet, only with a lot more screaming. The scent of burning flesh curls into your nostrils and stays there. The rest of the crew watches from a distance. They've seen it before and they'll see it again. One of them even places a bet on whether Lemuel will last a week. You pretend not to hear it. There's a strange camaraderie in pirate life. Equal parts loyalty and gallows humor. You patch Lemuel up as best you can, bandage the stump, and say a quick prayer to whoever's listening. Probably no one. Historians still argue whether pirate surgeons had formal medical training. Most likely, they didn't. Some, like you, picked it up through necessity and horror. Others were disgraced doctors, disgruntled barbers, or, occasionally, lucky quacks who just owned a sharp knife and knew not to stick in the wrong spot. What's certain is that there were few rules and fewer standards. You drag Isaac to a quieter corner once he comes to. You splash water on his face and shove some bread into his hand. You feign again, you mutter, "And I'm cutting your own leg off just to teach you how it's done." He smiles weakly. "Yes, doctor. You're not allowed to call me that until you can stitch without passing out." You head topside to wash your hands in the rain barrel. The water's gone cloudy, probably from someone rinsing fish in it. You remind yourself not to drink anything for the rest of the day. Above, the ship rocks gently, the sky bruised with storm clouds in the distance. You squint and spot a few dark shapes following in your wake. Sharks. They know. They always know. Dead or dying, it doesn't matter. They'll take what you give them. A sobering thought, considering how many bodies you've tossed overboard. Some wrapped in sailcloth, others barely that. A splash, a few seconds of silence, and then gone. It's not always pirates who throw their dead to the sea. Navy ships do it too. It's just that you tend to do it more often. The hazards of the job. Someone taps your shoulder. "Doc, it's Jacob." Something's wrong with his face. You trudge down again, already bracing for worst. Jacob is leaning against the bulkhead, his face bloated and purple, one eye swollen shut, and his lips are crusted with something yellow and foul. He struggles to breathe through his nose, which looks misshapen. You lean closer and wince. "Tooth abscess, you say?" He groans. "Just yank it, will you?" You gnaw and rummage in your tools for the tooth key, an evil-looking iron contraption that's probably more feared than your bone saw. Jacob sees it and immediately regrets his decision. "Hold still," you say, as if that's going to help. You jam the key into his mouth, twist, and yank. The cracking sound is audible over the creaking ship. A squirt of pus and blood hits your shirt. You keep your gag reflex under control. Barely, and toss the tooth into a bucket. Jacob slumps back, dazed but alive. You offer him some rum. He chugs it, then passes out. Tooth infections kill, believe it or not. One bad molar, one bit of infected gum, and a man can be dead within days. Swollen shut throat, brain swelling, fever dreams, and all from something no bigger than a pebble. Sometimes you think the real curse of piracy isn't the violence or the storms, or even the hangings. It's the daily parade of tiny horrors that never seem to end. By late afternoon, you're covered in grime, your hands ache, and your stomach growls like an angry dog. You manage to choke down some hardtack. Bread so stale it's basically a fossil, and try not to think about how many weevils you just swallowed. The crew plays cards nearby, laughing and cursing. You pause and let yourself exhale. This brief moment, is peace in its weird, warped way. A surgeon's life on a pirate ship is a constant game of triage. You never get to fix everything. You just do what you can before the next crisis arrives. A creak overhead catches your attention. A sailor in the crow's nest shouts, "Ship on the horizon!" That piece? Gone. You rush topside as the captain peers through a spyglass. A merchant vessel, fat and slow, perfect prey. The crew scrambles into position, excited by the promise of plunder. You, on the other hand, see only blood, more work, more bodies. The captain barks orders. Prepare to board. You roll your eyes. I'll prepare the tourniquets. The wind howls as you draw nearer to the merchant. Grappling hooks fly, men shout, and then chaos. Screams, clangs, the unmistakable sound of blades meeting bone. You stay back at first, preparing for the wounded, sharpening your knives with grim resolve. And sure enough, within minutes, they begin dragging them back. Wounded pirates, groaning and dripping with gore. You don't ask questions. You just get to work. One has a deep gut wound, his intestines slipping through his fingers. You clean and stuff and stitch and pray it's enough. Another has a head wound, bad but not leaking brain, so he gets your good linen bandage. A third is dead on arrival. You strip his boots. No sense wasting good leather. You lose track of time. Night falls. The decks are stained red. The plunder is being sorted while you're elbow deep in your third chest cavity. The captain walks by, tips his hat, and says, "Good work, surgeon." You mutter, "Would be better if you stopped stabbing people." He laughs and keeps walking. Eventually, the last wound is closed. The last body is wrapped. You slump against a barrel, exhausted, filthy, and wondering, again, why you didn't become a baker. Bakers don't get blood on their shoes. You don't remember falling asleep, but you remember waking up, because it's not really waking up. It's more like being shaken out of death's waiting room by a wet, salty slap of reality. Your back aches from leaning against that barrel all night, and your legs have gone to sleep before the rest of you did. You groan and stretch, but you're cut short by a sharp pain in your shoulder. Probably from hauling that sailor with the gut wound. What was his name again? Doesn't matter. He probably won't survive the week. The ship is eerily quiet in the morning, that special kind of stillness that only comes after storm or slaughter. You listen to the gentle lapping of the sea against the hull, the occasional creak of the rigging, and someone vomiting overboard. Ah, the sound of home. You pull yourself to your feet and shuffle below deck, where the air somehow smells worse than it did yesterday. You check on Lemuel, who's still alive, miraculously. He's sweating buckets and muttering nonsense. Infection setting in fast. You pat his shoulder gently. "I'll check your dressings later, mate," you whisper. You've learned not to make promises. On your way back above deck, you spot something that makes you stop mid-step. A rat chewing on one of your bandage rolls. Oh, no you don't. You hiss, lurching forward. The rat scurries off with a little squeak, but the damage is done. The bandages are frayed, soiled, probably infected 6 different ways. You toss them with a sigh and mentally subtract another 3 feet of clean cloth from your already dwindling supplies. Being a pirate surgeon means your biggest enemy isn't always death, it's logistics. Good luck maintaining sterile tools and clean gauze in a place where washing your hands means dunking them in seawater that probably just held someone's lunch or leg. Historians still argue whether pirate crews truly valued their surgeons or just saw them as necessary evils. Some say they were second only to the captain. Others claim they were treated like glorified carpenters with a fetish for knives. You can say this much: nobody cares how much they respect you when they're bleeding out. Then, suddenly, you're the most popular person on the ship. Breakfast is predictably miserable. The hardtack is soft in the middle from weevils and somehow harder on the edges. You chew around the worst bits and wash it down with something they're calling rum, but tastes more like fermented boot polish. At least it's warm. Your assistant, Isaac, appears still a little pale but upright. That's an improvement. Lemuel's fever spiking, he says. You nod. We'll try another poultice later. He pauses, clearly reluctant. And there's another one. Another what? Finger, he says, holding up a hand and wiggling his pinky. Not mine. Davy's. It's gone bad. You finish your bite slowly, swallow, and sigh. Of course it is. You follow him to the hammock where Davy lies, his hand wrapped in a soil rag. When you peel it back, the smell hits you like cannon smoke. His ring finger is black to the knuckle, the nail barely hanging on. You poke it gently. It doesn't even bleed. Sorry, Davy. It's coming off. Davy groans. Figured. You'll give me something for the pain? You nod and offer him a generous swig from your private stash. Stronger than the crew's rum. He downs it without hesitation. You sterilize your small bone saw again, say a quick mental apology, and start cutting. You've done arms, legs, even a couple of toes. But fingers? They're delicate little nightmares. Tiny bones, thin nerves, no room for error. The trick is to move fast before the rot spreads. The other trick is not slipping and slicing into your own hand. That would be an embarrassing way to die. It comes off clean. You drop the blackened bit into a bucket and bandage the stump. Davy winces, but doesn't cry out. Tough man. I'll be playing the fiddle again in no time. He jokes weakly. You smirk. You never could before. He chuckles. It helps a little. Later, when you toss the finger overboard, you catch sight of a small cluster of sharks still trailing you. Persistent things. You wonder if they've developed a taste for fingers yet. You head back to the hold, and finally decide to check your surgical chest properly. It's a sorry collection, mostly rusted tools, a dwindling pile of linen scraps, a few bottles of laudanum, an ancient jar of honey you use for wounds. The honey's probably older than Isaac. And then there's the leeches, a jar of them. You glare at the squirming black spaghetti with eyes. You don't like using leeches, but sometimes they're the only way to draw infected blood when you don't have better options. One of them floats lazily up to the glass, like it's challenging you. Pirate medicine is a patchwork of superstition, desperation, and occasionally dumb luck. Some things work because they're grounded in truth, like using maggots to clean wounds. Others are complete nonsense, like the man who swore swallowing crushed emeralds would cure scurvy. Spoiler, it didn't. You remember a case not long ago, young cabin boy, coughing blood, classic consumption. You had nothing for him but warm tea, garlic cloves, and a prayer. He died that night. Someone claimed his spirit got trapped in the ropes, and now they won't touch the starboard rigging without muttering a blessing. You don't correct them. Let sailors believe what they need to. The next few days blur together. Cut, bandage, so rinse and rum, repeat. A minor brawl over stolen rations ends with one man stabbed in the ribs. Another collapses from heat stroke. Lemuel finally dies. You wrap his body and hold a short service. Mostly silence, one or two whispered jokes. Then the splash. That night, a storm brews on the horizon. You can feel it in your bones, in the way the air goes thick and salty. The sails flap like angry ghosts, and the crew moves with urgency. Then the fever hits you. You wake soaked in sweat, your mouth dry as sun-bleached driftwood. Isaac hovers nearby, panicked. You're hallucinating. You see strange shapes in the wood grain, hear laughter where there's none. In a cruel twist, the surgeon becomes a patient. You try to give Isaac instructions. Cold compresses, water, mix honey with vinegar. He nods, tries his best. He even applies one of your own salves. It burns like fire, but you nod. That's how you know it's working. Historians still argue whether pirate ships carried any kind of medicinal stockpile beyond rum and leeches. Some records mention dried herbs. Others refer to mysterious blue pills made of mercury and chalk. Not exactly your dream pharmacy. The fever breaks on the third day. You wake up weak but alive, with Isaac watching you like a dog afraid of losing its owner. You croak. "You stitch anyone while I was out?" He nods, beaming. "Twice." You smile, even though it hurts. "Told you not to call me doctor." He laughs. "Aye, but you earned it." You sit up slowly, everything aching. The world tilts, but not so much that you fall. You glance down at your hands, calloused, scarred, and somehow still steady. You're not dead. Not yet. You swing your legs over the side of the hammock and plant your feet on the floor. The boards creak beneath you. Somewhere above deck, someone shouts for sail. Life goes on. Your tools wait in the corner, already crusted with the next man's blood. You sigh, roll your shoulders, and shuffle toward them. Time to get back to work. When your fever finally fades, it leaves behind something even worse, clarity. You see the ship for what it really is, a creaking wooden coffin carrying too many men and not enough luck. The deck smells like sweat, salt, and slow rot of ambition. And you, pirate surgeon, are the one man aboard expected to outpace the Reaper with nothing but rusted blades, soggy linen, and sheer audacity. You step into morning light with a stitched-up bandana around your head and a limp in your step. The crew offers half-hearted nods or muttered greetings. You nod back. No one wants to look the surgeon in the eye for too long. He's a constant reminder of mortality, like death in a soggy apron. Someone calls out that the wind's died. You glance at the sails, hanging limp like discarded laundry. Stagnation, every sailor's favorite curse. A ship that doesn't move is just a floating tinderbox, a prison with a plank. Tempers sharpen, teeth grind, and, of course, accidents begin to happen. The first comes when two lads wrestle over a moldy orange, one of the last from port. One of them slips, crashes headfirst into a barrel hoop, and comes up with a flap of scalp hanging like a curtain over one eye. You barely react. Just grab your kit, rinse your hands in the nearest bucket of seawater, and pull the flap back into place. Stitch, tie off, wrap. Try not to pass out from the heat. He'll live. Probably. Then there's the cook's boy. He complains of stomach pains, then collapses in the galley during a knife sharpening. You get there quick, but his belly's tight as a drum. Could be appendicitis, or, as the crew calls it, gut demons. There's no cure for that. Not out here. You press a hand to his clammy forehead and whisper a lie. You'll be fine. The kid nods, grateful, and dies 2 hours later. You don't say anything when they drop him overboard, wrapped in a hammock with an old musket ball tucked in the folds to weigh him down. Just another splash, another ripple, another memory shoved into your brain's dusty cupboard. You start noticing the signs of the doldrums on the others. Hair-trigger tempers, whispering circles at night, men fingering knives as if they're lovers. Paranoia seeps into every corner like smoke. One man accuses another of hoarding water and pulls a dagger mid-argument. You're called to patch up the winner, who ends up with 3 broken ribs and a hole near his lung. You stuff it with salted lint and wrap him tight. He'll make it, someone asks. You shrug. He'll breathe. That's a start. Historians still argue whether pirates truly operated by democratic codes of conduct, or if that's just romantic myth. On this ship, it's somewhere in between, order enforced by reputation and violence, not vote. The captain rules, but he listens, especially when gold is short and wind is gone. And nobody listens to the surgeon unless their guts are on the floor. You decide to take inventory again. It's a little game you play with yourself. See how many useful things you've got left before your job becomes impossible. 1 jar of laudanum, half full, some powdered charcoal, a roll of decent linen. You're rationing like treasure. 1 small bottle of rose oil, meant for infection but mostly used now to disguise the smell of gangrene. And then there's your bone saw. It's nicked and dull, but it's yours. You sleep with it under your hammock now. There's a kind of comfort in knowing that if things get truly bad, At least you'll die holding something sharp. You remember an old superstition someone shared once. If you die with a blade in hand, you'll come back in the next life as a storm. You're not sure if that's a curse or a reward. The wind finally picks up after 5 days. Weak, but enough to move. Spirits lift slightly. Someone catches a fish. There's laughter, actual laughter. You allow yourself a bite and almost forget how salty everything tastes. You wonder if you'll ever eat something that wasn't soaked in brine. And then, just as things start to feel marginally survivable, a crewman falls from a rigging. It happens fast. A snapped rope, a missed foothold. He slams into the deck head first with a wet crunch that silences the laughter instantly. You rush to him, but it's obvious. His skull's caved in like a dropped melon. Blood's pooling around his ear. One eye twitches. Reflex, not life. Still, they call you. You kneel, pretend to check his pulse, mostly for show. Everyone watches you, waiting, hoping for a miracle from a man with a dirty apron and tired hands. You look up and shake your head. He's gone. They nod, murmur something vague about fate, and go back to their tasks. The corpse is dragged aside, left near the bow like unwanted cargo. You sit beside it for a moment longer, wiping your hands clean on a rag that stopped being cleaned sometime last year. You catch Isaac staring. He asks, "Why even check him?" You knew. You look at him, eyes heavy. Sometimes people need hope, even if it's hollow. He nods, doesn't ask again. A few nights later, you're woken by shouting. A fight's broken out near the powder store. Bad place for a brawl. You get there just in time to see one man stabbed clean through the thigh. He collapses, shrieking. Blood spurts like a fountain. You grab your tools without a word and get to work right there on the deck. The wound is deep, dangerously close to the femoral artery. You pack it with lint and press with your whole weight. Your knees ache, your back screams, but you don't let up. Someone tries to help. You growl at them until they back off. Eventually, the bleeding slows. You stitch it up in sloppy loops, hands cramping. Not your best work. But again, he's not dead. That's the bar now. Not skill, not precision. Just not dead. Later, as you clean your tools by lantern light, a rat scampers across your foot. You don't even flinch. You just look at it and mutter, "You want the saw next?" The rat squeaks and disappears into shadows. You start to think about writing things down. Maybe not for history's sake, but to remind yourself later that you were here, that this was real, that you, the pirate surgeon, once stood on a deck slick with blood and salt water, carving limbs and stitching flesh with nothing but stubbornness and spite. You find a scrap of parchment and a charcoal nub. You write one sentence. "Today I took a man's finger, save a leg, and lied about a dying boy." You stare at the words for a long time. Then you fold the parchment, tuck it into your pocket, and blow out the lantern. Tomorrow will bring more wounds, more blood, more decisions you're not qualified to make, but must make anyway. And you'll be ready, because you have to be, because out here, you're the last line between death and a shallow splash. Your hands ache constantly now, not the sharp ache of injury, but the deep, grinding kind that worms into your bones and refuses to leave. You suspect you've developed arthritis in your fingers. Early, sure, but nothing about life as a pirate surgeon is built for longevity. You try to ignore it as you sharpen your blades with small, circular motions, your version of meditation. The ship creaks and groans around you as always, and you begin to notice every change in the rhythm of its voice. One footfall too heavy, one rope too quiet. You become a bloodhound for discomfort. The calm doesn't last. It never does. Midday brings a cry from the crow's nest. Sail, 2 points to starboard. You squint through a spyglass, and sure enough, a merchantman. Fat, slow, practically yawning toward the horizon. The captain give the order, and your floating madhouse suddenly becomes a beehive of action. Men scurry. Cannons are checked. Blades are sharpened. You grab your kit. Not your tools. The other kit. The one packed for battles, with sutures already pre-threaded and rum-soaked rags folded like morbid napkins. You're not going to fight, of course. That's not your role. But you'll be needed. Oh, you'll be needed. As the ships draw closer, you can smell the tension. Literally. Sweat, salt, powder, and fear. It's the cocktail of every boarding party. You stand by the mainmast as the crew swings over. Screaming threats and curses, a pack of starving wolves in search of mutton. You wait, and sure enough, the wounded start pouring back. The first is a boy with a deep gash across his shoulder. You work quickly, binding the wound and pouring whiskey into the raw edge. He howls, which you take as a sign of life. You bark at him to stop moving. He doesn't, of course. The second is worse. A shattered forearm, bones poking out like splintered oars. You grab the saw. There's no question this one's coming off. You wish you had chloroform, or ether, or morphine. You wish for a lot of things. Instead, the crewman bites down on a leather strap, and you get to work. The saw shrieks against bone. Blood sprays. You blink it from your eyes and keep going. When it's done, you throw the limb overboard without ceremony. He'll either live or he won't. You don't have time to check, because now comes the captain's voice. We've taken the ship. There's a short cheer. You don't join in. You're too busy digging a bullet out of someone's thigh with tweezers you heated over a lantern. Later, when the fighting's over and the spoils have been counted, sugar, textiles, coins, and a few terrified sailors, the real work begins. The captain wants information. He wants a map, names, rumors of gold fleets and soft merchant routes. One prisoner, a merchant officer, refuses to talk. He's chained to the mainmast, mouth shut tight. The crew looks to you. You frown. What do you expect me to do? Scare him, says the first mate, surgeon style. You walk over slowly. Your apron is still stained from the day's amputations. Your hands are red to the wrists. You pick up a cauterizing iron, still warm. You don't say a word. Just let the silence stretch. The officer's eyes go wide. I'm not here to hurt you, you say gently. Not unless I have to. But I've removed 9 limbs today. How many do you think I can take before lunch tomorrow? He talks. They always talk. Historians still argue whether pirate surgeons were expected to double as torturers. The truth is, not usually. But intimidation? That's part of the gig. Fear can be a useful anesthetic. And in your hands, every bloodstain becomes a threat, every twitch a warning. Later that night, as the ship drifts quietly under stars, you finally take a moment to breathe. You sit near the galley, listening to the muffled laughter of victorious men. Someone plays a sad fiddle tune. You watch your hands. They tremble slightly, even when still. You miss silence. True silence. The kind that isn't haunted by memory or ghosts of screams. The next morning, there's a new patient, one of the prisoners. He's young, maybe 16. Shot during the skirmish, but hidden below deck until now. He's pale and feverish. Infection has bloomed in his abdomen. There's nothing you can do. You sit beside him, hold his hand as he shivers and mutters in a language you don't speak. He dies just before dawn. You close his eyes, clean his face, and return to your cot for 15 minutes of sleep. That's the rhythm now. Violence and silence. Blood and brine. Sometimes you forget you once had a name. It gets weirder. One of the pirates, a lanky Welshman named Bevan, starts coughing up blood. He claims it's nothing, just rum throat. But you see the blotchy rash climbing his chest, and you know what's coming. Scurvy's not just bleeding gums and loose teeth. It's a whole body collapse. Bevan's got it bad. You try to improvise a remedy. Boil pine needles. Mix vinegar with leftover lime peels from months ago. None of it helps. He dies with strange, apologetic smile on his face, as if sorry to inconvenience you. The next week brings more cases. Malnutrition, bad water, fungal infections you don't even have names for. A crewman develops something that makes his skin peel like old wallpaper. You cover him in ash and goose fat and hope for the best. You think about leaving. You fantasize about it. Jumping ship, swimming to a friendly coast, disappearing into the world as just another scarred man with haunted eyes. But you won't, because they need you. And in some strange, broken way, you need them, because in this floating nightmare, You become something unkillable, not quite healer, not quite human. And at the end of each day, as the sun dips and the lanterns flicker, you wash your hands and say the same quiet prayer. Let me save one more. Just one. You don't sleep so much as drift. Somewhere between midnight and dawn, your eyes flutter shut, your body folds inward like a collapsed sail, and your mind drifts into shadowy half-dreams. Always the same themes. Flashes of blood, waves roaring overhead, someone screaming your name, or maybe not your name. Maybe a name you forgot months ago. You're awoken this time by the unmistakable sound of vomiting. It's Wilkes again, one of the newer crew, maybe 17, fresh from some port-side bar fight turned recruitment. He's pale, sweating, and curled around his stomach, like it might slither away if he lets go. Something you ate? You murmur, already kneeling by his cot. He shakes his head and then coughs so violently you think something inside him might rupture. And then you see it, the red flecks on his lips. Blood. You sit back on your heels, frown, and tap his cheek gently. When did this start? He can't answer. You know what this is. You've seen it before. The older sailors call it bloody flux. Moderns would call it dysentery, but out here, it might as well be a curse. You try the usual things. Boiled water, peppermint soaked in stale rum, your dwindling supply of laudanum measured out in precious droplets. It buys him hours, not days. By sundown, his body is rigid and dry as driftwood. You cover his face with a stain sheet. The crew barely glances over. That's something you've noticed. Death gets quieter the longer you're at sea. Less screaming, less shock. These men have seen too much to panic anymore. Even the cook just grunts, muttering something about another mouth off the ration. And you just clean your tools again, out of habit more than hope. One of the strangest things about this job is how many tools you've had to invent. Nothing on this ship was designed for medicine. So you become a kind of morbid carpenter, fashioning instruments from whatever lies around. Knives sharpened into scalpels, spoons bent into retractors, fishing hooks sterilized for stitching. Your proudest creation, if you can call it that, is a set of dental pliers you hammered out of iron scraps. They're crude and a little heavy, but they do the job when someone's gums swell up like bread dough. To your dismay, you use them a lot. Scurvy's making its round again. Teeth are falling out like loose nails. You try to get ahead of it. Squeeze juice from the few citrus peels you hoarded in a wax pouch. Boil whatever greens a cook can scrape together. But it's a slow rot. These men are dying from the inside out, and they don't even know it. Better go in a boarding raid, says Grote, the gunner, grinning through bleeding gums. At least that's quick. He's not wrong. You attempt to keep records, sometimes a crude logbook where you jot down symptoms and treatments. It's a pathetic excuse for science, but it gives you something to cling to. Maybe someday someone will read it and figure out what you couldn't. Of course, most pages get soaked in salt water or blood and the ink runs. Still, you try. There's another problem creeping across the deck now. Rats. You'd think they'd be a minor annoyance compared to festering wounds and gangrenous limbs. But no, these little monsters carry fleas. And fleas carry typhus. And typhus carries death like a torch at a powder keg parade. You lay out traps. Try to convince the quartermaster to let you sprinkle powdered sulfur in the corners. Even suggest sleeping above deck more often. The crew mostly laughs. Afraid of a rat, Doc? Someone calls as one skitters across the mainmast. No, you're not afraid of the rats. You're afraid of what they mean. Where there are rats, there is filth. And where there is filth, there is fever. By the third day, fever breaks out in earnest. It starts with Griggs, the bosun. He comes to you trembling, eyes glassy. You touch his forehead and flinch at the heat. 2 days later, 5 others join him in your makeshift sickbay, a sweltering, reeking corner of the hold you claimed as your own. By the end of the week, 10 are down. You run out of clean cloth. You tear up your own shirt. You boil what you can. You toss out bedding soaked with sweat and vomit. You whisper every half-remembered prayer you can think of. Doesn't matter which god's listening, as long as one hears. Historians still argue whether the death toll from disease aboard pirate ships outpaced the casualties of battle. Some say yes. Others think pirate crews, smaller and more mobile, fare better than Navy fleets or merchantmen. But you've seen enough to know it's not a numbers game. It's about time. The longer you're at sea, the more time disease has to eat away at you. You don't sleep for 3 days. You tend to the sick, wipe their brows, empty their buckets, and sometimes just hold their hands. You tell them stories. Mostly lies. You say things like, "You can be fine, and this'll pass, and the worst is over." They nod. They want to believe you. You want to believe you. Then one night, you get sick too. It starts with a chill, then a fierce heat, then that telltale ache behind your eyes. You try to ignore it, but your legs won't carry you farther than a few steps. You collapse next to your bunk and sleep for 20 hours. When you wake, your mouth tastes like iron, and someone's tied a rag around your head like a turban soaked in sweat. You survive, somehow, just barely. When you return to the deck, half the crew looks like corpses in waiting. But there's something else, too. Respect. They nod at you differently now, not just as a tool or a necessary evil. You were down there with them. You suffered, and you came back. "Doc's one of us now," someone whispers. And maybe that's the most terrifying part, because you're starting to feel it, too. The soft pull toward this floating underworld. The rhythm of it. The bitter camaraderie. The grim jokes. The way someone always hands you rum when you sit, and no one speaks of the dead until the sea has taken them. There's a kind of comfort in the chaos, which is why, when a lookout cries out, "Storm!" hard to port, you don't panic. You just grab your kit, stow your blades, and mutter, "Of course there's a storm." Because on this ship, there's always something worse than what you're already dealing with. And somehow you're still here, still standing, still not drowned. You wedge your boots tighter against the slick planks as the ship lurches under you, groaning like it's trying to tear itself apart. The sails scream overhead. The rigging hums, stretched taut as fiddle strings. Wind howls with that eerie, hollow note that tells you this isn't just a passing squall. It's one of those storms. The kind that pirates don't write songs about. You shove your medical kit into the cabinet you nailed to the bulkhead weeks ago. It's barely holding on, just like everything else aboard this floating coffin. You brace as another wave crashes over the bow and sends two men skidding past the galley hatch, one of them screaming all the way. You hear bones crack. You hear them not scream after that. It takes all your strength to clamber below decks. The lanterns swing wildly, their light casting shadows that jitter like nervous ghosts across the timbers. Barrels roll loose. Buckets clang. The whole lower deck smells like wet dog and old blood. And then you see him, Harlan, the quartermaster, pinned under a broken beam. You crawl toward him as the floor rises and falls beneath you like a beast breathing. His leg is trapped, twisted in a way it absolutely should not be. The femur is snapped. You don't need to feel it to know. The angle says it all. Bone through flesh. Probably splintered arteries. You shout for help, but your voice is a raindrop in a hurricane. No one hears. So you do what you always do. Work. You wedge a length of spar under the beam and lean into it, your muscles screaming back at you. It doesn't budge. Harlan groans. His breath smells like salt and fear. Finally, a deckhand named Mooney sees you and scrambles over. Between the two of you, the beam shifts enough for you to drag Harlan free. That's the good news. The bad news is what his leg looks like now. You drag him to your corner clinic, which has become more battlefield tent than anything resembling a medical space. Water sloshes across the floor. A rat skitters past with something suspiciously pink in its jaws. You ignore it. Focus. Tourniquet first. Tight. High. Screamingly tight. You need to stem the bleeding before he pours out all over your table. You look at the leg, then at your saw, then at Harlan. You're going to lose it, you say bluntly, because kindness is a luxury you can't afford mid-hurricane. He nods, white as foam. You pull your saw from the oilcloth. It's duller than you'd like, but you haven't had the time or the peace to sharpen it since the last amputation. You pour a slug of rum into his mouth. He doesn't flinch. You don't wait for it to take effect. You slice. It's fast. Brutal. There's no finesse to it. Your only goal is speed and not dying. Your arms are shaking from effort by the time the leg comes free. You toss it into the bucket with the others. Yes, you have a bucket. No, you don't want to talk about it. You cauterize the stump with a heated blade, the hiss barely audible over the thunder. Harlan passes out. You bandage him fast, knotting the linen with hands that won't stop trembling. The ship tilts again, savagely. A crate breaks free and crashes against the wall inches from your head. If you'd been standing a foot to the left, you'd be part of the decor. Later, when the storm begins to die, the deck looks like a battlefield. Blood, salt with splinters, and the twitching remnants of what used to be the galley. You find the cook in a corner, clutching a ladle like it's a cutlass. "I'm retiring," he mutters. "Swear to God, I'm gonna sell pineapples on an island." You don't laugh. You just nod, because you get it. That storm didn't just break the mast. It cracked something deeper, the illusion of safety, the idea that you can predict anything out here. Even pirates have routines, you see. Even chaos becomes a habit. But storms like that remind you, nature doesn't care about your hierarchy or your reputation. It just wants to crush you into driftwood. You visit Harlan a few hours later. He's feverish, mumbling about his mother's kitchen and roast duck. You keep him as cool as you can. Change the bandage. Check for infection. It's already setting in. You see the red creeping up the stump like spilled wine on cloth. You sniff. Yep, that smell. Pus and decay. You might save him. You might not, but you'll try. That's what you do, isn't it? It's not long before the other injuries roll in. Smashed fingers. Dislocated shoulders. One guy nearly bit his tongue off when a mast snapped and whipped the deck like a serpent. You stitch what you can. You reset what you must. You pull more teeth than you'd like. "Could have been worse," someone mutters as you wrap his fractured wrist. "Could have been landlocked," you reply deadpan. He laughs. You don't. That night, you catch a glimpse of yourself in a shard of mirror tucked into a beam. You look like someone who's been shipwrecked emotionally, even if the ship survived. Sallow skin, eyes sunken from sleeplessness, and something else, something hollow behind the stare. It's a pirate surgeon's 1,000-yard stare. You'd heard about it, whispered on docks. That look, the one that says, "I've seen inside too many people and too many people die." You have it now. And still, the ship sails on. Because here's the thing they don't tell you. The sea doesn't care what you've been through. It doesn't pause for trauma or grief. You get a storm one day, and then the next day it's calm as glass. Birds circle. The sun rises. Fish flash beneath the hull. The world keeps turning. And so do you. You check on Harlan every morning. He's not improving. You've done what you can. Scraped together a poultice of moss and honey, wrapped him in clean rags soaked in brine, whispered 100 sailors' prayers. You even tried leeches, which never worked but gave you the illusion of effort. Still, the fever burns. You sit with him when you can, reading from a half-rotted prayer book you found in a dead man's pocket weeks ago. It's missing every third page and the binding's gone, but it calms him. Or maybe just your voice does. Some nights, he holds your hand. He doesn't remember your name, though. Just calls you Doc like the others. That's okay. You barely remember it yourself anymore. And all the while, other ailments pile up. Ringworm, boils, fevers, infected tattoos, twisted knees. A man who accidentally impaled himself trying to sort of fly with a cutlass, don't ask. There is no end to it, but you work, and work, and work. Historians still argue whether pirate surgeons had the worst job aboard ship or the most valuable one. Some say captains protected their surgeons at all costs. An injured crew is a dead crew. Others claim surgeons were just another tool, cast aside when dulled. You suspect the truth is both. You're treasured, yes, but you're also trapped. A valuable prisoner. Because who else wants this life? Who else will stitch flesh that smells like rot? Who else will hold a dying man's head while his insides spill out and the captain shouts for speed? You think about leaving. Often. Maybe at the next port. But you know you won't. Because for all its horror, all its filth, all its trauma, this ship needs you. And somewhere, deep down in that broken mirror soul of yours. You need it, too. You wake up to the sound of humming, not the comforting kind. No, this is the dissonant, tuneless hum of a man who's lost half his mind and maybe 3/4 of his toes. You open one eye and realize it's Gregor, the old bosun, sitting at the edge of your makeshift cot, rocking gently, chewing on what looks like a scrap of leather. "Dreams again," he mumbles. "All snakes. And my sister's soup." You nod slowly, sitting up. He's harmless, probably, but the snake's part worries you. Delirium's making rounds lately, and it's catching faster than scurvy. You run a hand through your hair, wincing as your fingers catch on something sticky. Blood, maybe, or tar, or someone else's blood. Honestly, who can tell anymore? You sigh, roll to your feet, and start your rounds. The first stop is Harlan. His fever's broken. Finally, he's breathing easier, muttering about mango trees and fireflies. You let yourself feel relief for a full 6 seconds before moving on. Next is Shanks, whose broken collarbone you set during the storm. He's tried to remove the sling twice because it itches like sin and I need both arms to drink. You tie it tighter. After him is Bess. She isn't crew, or at least, she wasn't. You found her 2 weeks ago, half dead in a dinghy drifting off the Florida coast. Blonde, sunburnt, dressed in what might have once been a maid's uniform. You patch her up, broken wrist, busted lip, cracked ribs. She hasn't said much, just watches you with these dark, unsettling eyes like she's waiting for something. "Today," she speaks, "I was a surgeon's assistant once." You freeze mid-bandage. Back in Martinique. Plantation Hospital. "We saw things, you know?" You nod. "Of course you know." She goes quiet again. You almost ask what things. You don't, but you start watching her more closely after that. Pirate crews are strange beasts. Fluid, lawless, yet weirdly structured. Anyone can join, but earning trust is a process. Like seasoning a pot stew, too fast and it curdles. Bess is seasoning. The question is what flavor she'll become. Meanwhile, the captain's leg is acting up again. You head topside, where he's propped up near the helm, smoking a pipe and grimacing. The man's part myth, huge beard, deep voice, at least 3 confirmed kills in bar fights, and a limp that never healed quite right. You examine the old wound, just above the knee, where a musket ball tore through last spring. It weeps a little. Redness is creeping in. You lance the abscess with a practiced hand, ignoring his grunts and a very colorful stream of swearing. That includes 2 languages and a made-up third. You're lucky you still have the leg. You mutter, squeezing pus into a cloth. "I am the leg," he growls. "This crew follows my limp, not my orders." You can't tell if he's joking. Either way, you slap a poultice on the wound and advise no standing for a day. He stands immediately after, because of course he does. "Historians still argue," he says mockingly, as he hobbles back to his post, "whether pirate captains were brilliant tacticians or absolute lunatics." You arch a brow. "Why not both?" He chuckles, then coughs, then spits over the side. A fleck of blood lands on your boot. Fantastic. You make your way to the lower hold, where the rats have declared war on the flower stores. You've taken a trap in them yourself because the ship's official rat catcher died trying to ride one after too much rum. Long story. You pull 3 rats from a barrel, throw 2 overboard, and keep the third for a crew member who swears rat broth helps with her asthma. That's not how medicine works. But who are you to kill hope? Later, while trying to stitch a groin wound in a space not meant for surgery, or knees, you overhear 2 men talking about him. The mute. No one knows his name. No one knows where he sleeps. He's just there. Appears when something's wrong. Carries no weapons, only tools. Repairs sails, mends ropes, and one stitch a man's eyelid back on with nothing but a fishbone and a prayer. Some say he's a ghost. Others, a former surgeon like you who snapped and chose silence. You've never spoken to him, but you want to. So one night, after the others are asleep, you leave a note on the mainmast, tied with red thread, his calling card. It reads, "I'd like to talk. From one fixer to another, You don't expect a reply. The next morning, you find your scalpel set, every blade honed, polished, gleaming like new. You smile for the first time in days. Still, you keep your guard up. Silence can be a kindness or a warning. Around midweek, the sea brings a floating wreck to your path. Half a fishing boat, scorched and bobbing, with just enough planks to climb aboard. You and 3 crew investigate. What you find is nightmare fuel, bones picked clean, a diary that ends mid-sentence, and, worst of all, a single wooden arm, carved intricately with symbols you don't recognize. You bring the arm aboard. Bess takes one look and turns pale. "That's slave magic," she whispers. You don't ask how she knows. Later, you toss it overboard. Not because you believe in curses, but because you don't want to start. Still, for the next 3 nights, no one sleeps well. The crew's restless. Something unseen prowls the decks. You find chickens dead in their coop, their heads turned backward. You suspect a prank. But you also double lock your quarters, just in case. You catch the cook boiling seaweed and whispering to himself. When you ask why, he just says, keeps the ship honest. Whatever that means. Every pirate crew has its superstitions. Salt in boots to ward off spirits. Tying knots in hair before battle for protection. A charm made from fish eyes and teeth worn around the neck. You used to laugh at all of it. You don't anymore. Not after you saw a dead man sit up once. He was very dead, to be clear. You declared it yourself. Chest wound, no pulse, eyes glassy. And yet, 3 hours later, he sat, made eye contact, then slump again. Everyone saw it. No one speaks of it now. You suspect Bess knows more than she lets on. One night you find her in the galley muttering over a bowl of boiling herbs. When she notices you, she doesn't hide it. "For the nightmares," she says. "Yours, not mine." You don't ask how she knows that, either, but you drink the tea. It tastes like moldy cinnamon and despair. Still, you sleep and dream of fire. Later that week, a new injury arrives. Young cabin boy, slipped on an eel. Yes, an eel. Don't ask. Compound fracture. Bone sticking out like it's trying to escape the rest of him. You sedate him with rum and start the reset. But something's wrong. The bone's brittle. Too brittle for his age. Like dried coral. You crack it while repositioning. Now you have to improvise. You remember a technique you read once in an old, soggy Dutch journal. Wrap splinters of bone in seaweed and oil, then brace with leather. You try it. It works. For now. The boy smiles through tears and mouths, "Thank you." You tousle his hair, then go below and vomit into a bucket. Because you're exhausted. Because it's never just one wound, one problem, one mystery. It's all of them, all the time. No shore leave. No relief. No one checking in on you. You started talking to yourself in 3 different accents, just to keep it interesting. You stitch a broken thumb while speaking in French. Bandage a sailor's thigh while trying out your Scottish. You pretend you're a London barber surgeon with a limp and a fondness for sausages. It helps. A little. Because if you don't laugh, even a weird crack kind of laugh, then the silence wins. The weather shifts. You can feel it before you see it. Low pressure settling in your bones like bad news. Your fingers ache. The sea thickens. Even the wind grows hesitant, curling lazily instead of pushing forward. Storm's coming. But that's not what has everyone jumpy. No, it's the bird. A single albatross, circling overhead since dawn. No one speaks of it directly, but you catch the crew eyeing it like it's a floating curse. It doesn't flap, just glides silent, solemn, watching. You know the old sailor's rhyme. Kill an albatross and doom follows. Problem is, nobody touched this one. It showed up on its own, which is worse. Bess says it's looking for something. What? You ask. She shrugs. Maybe you. And then walks away. You don't sleep well that night. Around midnight, the ship lifts hard to port. You jolt upright, heart racing, wondering if it's a storm. But no, just the cargo hold shifting. You throw on your coat and boots and head below. It's not cargo. It's bodies. 3 of them, arranged deliberately on the floor. Backs arched, eyes wide open, mouth stuffed with sea salt. You reel back. Gag. Who wouldn't? Your brain scrambles for logic. Maybe a prank. Maybe madness. Maybe a warning. You want to run, but you force yourself forward. You check for signs. No external wounds. Pupils fixed. No pulse. No heat. No struggle. They didn't fight whatever this was. Poison, you whisper aloud. You take a pinch of salt from one of their mouths. Rub it between your fingers. It's not just salt. It's salt mixed with powdered bone. You know that texture. You bag it for later. Maybe Bess will recognize it. You report the deaths to the captain. He listens silent, one hand on his old wound. When you finish, he says only, burn them. You nod, and do it before sunrise. The smell lingers for hours. Sweet, sharp, wrong. You can't eat for a day and a half afterward. But something shifts in the crew. Tension thins, like some invisible thread has been cut. No one admits to feeling better, but everyone's shoulders hang a little lower. Laughter returns cautiously, like a deer sniffing the air. The albatross disappears. You'd like to believe the two things are unrelated. You'd like to, but that's the thing about being a pirate surgeon. You stop believing in coincidence after the 5th time someone dies, right after saying, at least it can't get worse. Speaking of worse, you're out of laudanum. Completely. You stretch the last few drops to treat a case of infected gums. And now the bottle is dry, and your hands are trembling just thinking about the next surgery without it. So you improvise. You make a sedative from boiled clove, rum, moldy bark from a crate labeled Jamaica 1704, and a sprig of something Bess claims is Mariner's Mercy. It smells like dead lemons. You test it on a rat. It falls asleep, then wakes up 20 minutes later and tries to fight a spoon. Okay, not ideal, but workable. 2 days later, the first Real test comes. A deep forearm gash on Tomas, the mast climber. The cut is clean but wide, likely from an anchor hook. You clean it, whisper reassuring nonsense, and administer your experimental sedative. He goes under, sort of, halfway through the stitching. He starts reciting a bawdy sea shanty backward. You ignore it, so do the crewman watching. Everyone pretends this is normal. You finish the stitches, bind the arm, and gently slap Tomas awake. He stares at you for a long time. You've got moonlight in your beard, he whispers. You don't have a beard, but you thank him anyway. Later, Bess pulls you aside. I added something, she says. To the sedative? She nods. Datura seed helps with the dreams. You pause. Datura is poisonous in high doses. Very poisonous. You give her a slow stare. She smiles. It was a small seed. You stop using the sedative. Quietly. Still, you keep the rat. Name him Winston. He sleeps in your coat pocket and occasionally steals dried fish. You're not sure if he's a pet or a hallucination anymore. Honestly, either's fine. The days pass strangely now. Time folds in on itself. You perform minor surgeries while someone reads aloud from an old French cookbook. You bandage a gunpowder burn while the cook tries to make pancakes using sea biscuit crumbs and shark eggs. You remove a rotted molar from a man who insists on holding your hand through the whole process. You hold it. Why not? Moments of humanity are rare. One night, lightning strikes the mainmast. No rain, no thunder, just one blinding flash and a cracking sound like the earth splitting. You run topside. The mast is split, but intact. No fire, no damage, except for the smell. Sulfur and ozone and something else. Burnt rosemary? You look at the deck. Someone has carved a spiral into the wood. Not deep, but it's fresh. Still warm. The captain blames pranksters. Bess blames what we brought aboard. You don't blame anyone. You just file it away in your mental drawer, labeled stuff that shouldn't be. It's getting crowded in there. One morning, you wake up with a nosebleed, and it doesn't stop. You pinch, tilt, stuff cotton in there. Nothing works. Finally, you jam a strip of salted linen up both nostrils, and just go about your day looking like a haunted walrus. It slows after a few hours. You wonder if it's stress. or sea rot, or the fact that you haven't eaten anything green in 32 days. You check your gums in the mirror. Puffy, purple, yep, scurvy's knocking. You beg the quartermaster for citrus. He laughs so hard he almost falls overboard. So you do what you always do. You get creative. You boil seawater. Strain it, mix it with crushed barnacle, and chew the resulting sludge while pretending it's tea. It's not, but your gums stop bleeding after a week. So who's laughing now? Still the quartermaster, probably. Eventually, the crew starts calling you Bleeder, a nickname. That means you're part of the tribe now. Or at least, you're too useful to toss overboard. You try to take it as a compliment. You begin to realize something else. 2. These men, these thieves, outcasts, and rum-drenched disasters, they trust you. They bring you their pain, their secrets, their bodies. You stitch them, poke them, drain them, and they come back. Again and again, you become the ship's priest in a way, not in prayers, in ritual, in the way you lay out your tools before every procedure like relics, in how you light a single candle before amputations, in how you hum the same tune, a lullaby you barely remember. Whenever you sew someone shut, they watch you with reverence, not because you're holy, because you survived. And survival on a pirate ship is the rarest miracle of all. Then one evening, Bess hands you something. It's a needle, not one of yours. It's curved, made from bone, etched with a symbol. You don't recognize the symbol, but you know its meaning. It's an invitation to go deeper, to stop being just a surgeon, to become something else. You tuck the needle away. For now, the sea is calm that night. The albatross does not return. The wind hums a tune you think you recognize. And somewhere in the dark, Winston the rat curls up in your coat, twitching quietly in a dream. You wake to shouting. Not the usual kind. The gleeful, chaotic racket of pirates arguing over cards or mocking each other's questionable tattoos. This is tight, controlled, and scared. You throw on your coat, clutching Winston, who squeaks in protest, and rush to the deck. The sea is wrong. It lies still as spilled ink, motionless in every direction. Not a ripple, not a wave, just infinite, gleaming glass. And the ship's not moving. The sails are full, straining, but there's no wind, not a whisper. It's like the entire ocean took a breath and forgot to exhale. You've heard tales of this. A dead calm, the sailors call it. The doldrums, a place where wind vanishes and time unravels. Ships rot where they float. Men go mad from stillness alone. You scan the horizon. Nothing, except a speck, far off, too far to make sense of, but it doesn't move like a ship or a cloud. It stays still, then shifts slowly like something rising. Bess appears beside you, her voice barely above a whisper. You shouldn't look too long, she says. Why? She doesn't answer, just puts a hand over your eyes. When she lifts it, the speck is gone. You head below, not because you want to, but because the crew is already on edge and you're the guy they expect to stay sane. You can't join the chorus of doom whispering. In the sick bay, you distract yourself with inventory. Count your dwindling thread. Measure your clean water in sips, not pints. The alcohol is down a half a barrel, and that's being closely guarded by the quartermaster, who now sleeps on top of it like a dragon guarding its gold. Your patients trickle in. A man with blisters from staring into the sun. Another with what he insists is star sickness, a made-up illness he claims he got from looking at constellations in the wrong order. You treat them both, not because you believe them, but because treating fear is part of the job. Then comes the real test. A knife wound, deep, right across the belly. The kind that says, someone lost at cards and took it personally. You lay him out, clean the gash, and start stitching. He grabs your wrist mid-sew, eyes wide. They're watching from below. He says, you gently pry his hand away and nod. You've learned not to argue with hallucinations. But the thing is, he's not the only one saying it. Later that day, 2 more crewmen claimed to have seen eyes in the water. Not fish, not squid. Eyes like glass marbles. staring up from just beneath the surface. You check the water yourself. Nothing. But when you lean over the railing, your reflection looks wrong. It smiles before you do. You step back quickly, then pretend it didn't happen. Later, in the galley, the cook has a meltdown, throws a pot, curses the beans, and locks himself in the pantry. When you knock to check on him, he just says, "It's listening," and refuses to come out. Nobody eats that night. You try to sleep, but the silence is deafening. No creaking timbers. No water lapping the hull. No wind. It's like the world forgot how to be alive. You lie awake for hours, counting your own breath. 1, 2, 3. A knock. Soft. Deliberate. On your door. You open it. Nothing. Just a wet footprint. And a smell, damp rope and copper. You clean it. Of course. Can't have the crew panicking over spooky footprints. But you don't sleep again. The next day, someone rings a bell. That's odd. No one uses it unless it's fire or landfall. Everyone rushes up. There, on the horizon again. The speck. Closer now. Black sails. No flag. No visible crew. But it moves. No wind. Yet it moves. You all watch in silence. Then the captain, grizzled and mostly unfazed by life, says, "We're being hunted." It breaks the spell. Panic ripples through the men like fire through dry hay. But not you, because you're watching something else. That ship, if it's a ship, casts no reflection, and the water around it ripples in reverse. You blink. Gone. Again. You retreat to your quarters, heart hammering. What was it? Mirage? Ghost ship? Historians still argue whether phantom ships seen in the doldrums were whether tricks or mass hysteria, though some claim logs describe the same vessel again and again over decades. Same sails, same course, always just out of reach. You jot it down. You've started keeping a book, not of medicine, of patterns, strange weather, echoes, recurring dreams. You even map the cruise fevers when they spike and fade. The patterns line up disturbingly well with the ship's odd encounters. Coincidence? You gave up on that back around Section 3. Meanwhile, the dead calm continues. Day 6. You invent fake treatments just to give people something to do. You assign exercises to the crew. Jumping jacks, push-ups, shadow boxing. Anything to break the stillness. Bess paints protective symbols on the hull using squid ink and burnt cloves. You don't know what they mean, but they smell surprisingly nice. Then movement. A ripple. Small. Tentative. Followed by wind. Real wind. The sails snap. The ship groans, grateful. The men cheer. Weep. Some drop to their knees. The dead calm breaks. But the speck doesn't go away. In fact, it's closer now. You can see it clearly. Not a ship. Not exactly. It floats. But its hull is warped, like it was built by someone who only heard ships described once by a blind man in a cave. Its sails shimmer like oil on water. Wrong colors. Wrong angles. There's something on the deck. Moving. No telescope helps. The closer it gets, the less detail you can make out, like it's covered in fog that repels knowing. The crew starts whispering names. Old ones. Names meant to stay underwater. One man ties an anchor to his leg and jumps overboard. You're not sure whether to count that as suicide or attempted mutiny. You try to sleep. Winston curls beside you, snoring softly. Your dreams shift. You're back on the deck, staring at the phantom vessel. It opens, like a flower. You wake screaming. You don't remember what was inside, but you know it saw you. The wind holds steady now. The ship moves. But wherever you go, the other one follows. Always just at the edge of the horizon. A reminder, a threat, or maybe a mirror. And though the crew never says it out loud, everyone starts to act like they're on borrowed time. Every joke is sharper. Every drink deeper. Every brawl more intense. You bandage them, stitch them, watch them, and sometimes wonder if this is all a test. To see how long you can hold the line between surgeon and sorcerer. You find yourself humming that lullaby again, not during surgery, Just alone. It helps. Barely. On day 15, the cook emerges. He shaved his eyebrows. Says it was for protection. You don't ask. You just give him a biscuit and tell him he looks dashing. He beams. Bess begins to mutter new prayers. Not to saints. To things with too many names. You ask if she needs help. She hands you a bone charm and tells you to wear it on your left wrist. You do. No questions. That night, you see something floating beside the ship. It's a hand. Not severed. Just a hand. Reaching up from the water, as though waiting for something to grab. You don't tell the others. Some things are better unshared. But you do carve a small spiral into the inside of your bunk. Not for superstition. For memory. To prove you're still real. And when you finally fall asleep, you dream of the phantom ship. Only this time you're aboard it. And it's empty, except for a mirror. And in that mirror, you see yourself, wearing the wrong smile. You don't talk about the dream. Not the part with the mirror, not the empty deck. And especially not the way your reflection smiled before you did. Because you're pretty sure, no, absolutely sure, that telling someone would make it worse. Naming a thing gives it shape. Power. That's something the old crewmen mutter over their dice and dirty rum. Don't speak it or it'll speak back. So you stay quiet. Winston knows, of course. The little rat is a better confidant than any man aboard. He watches you now, perched on the table, nibbling a biscuit with suspicious judgment in his tiny eyes. Don't look at me like that. You mumble. You hallucinate, too. He squeaks. Maybe in agreement. Maybe not. Outside, the wind blows steady again. The phantom ship has disappeared. Or rather, it's not visible. But no one trusts that. It's still there, like a word stuck in the back of your throat or memory you're trying not to remember. And you get back to work. Because despite all the maritime horror and cosmic dread, the human body refuses to stop breaking. Smashed fingers, infected toes, toothaches, 2 more fevers, and a man who definitely got punched by a crewmate he owes money to but insists he fell down a stair. There aren't any stairs, you tell him, sewing his lip. Then maybe I tripped on a ghost, he grumbles. Did the ghost have a gold tooth and smell like fish? He just glares. You finish the stitches. He doesn't thank you. It's fine. Pirates aren't exactly known for manners. You've learned to treat gratitude like fresh water. Nice when it appears, but don't depend on it. That night, you lie awake listening to the creaks of the ship. The rhythm used to be soothing, like a heartbeat reminding you the vessel is alive. But now, every groan feels deliberate, like it's not just the wood settling, like it's the ship thinking. The fever patients start talking in their sleep. That's not new. What is new? They're all saying the same thing. Not words, you know, but the same sounds. Clicks, hums, and something like singing, but too deep for human throats. You transcribe it phonetically in your journal. If nothing else, it might help someone figure out what happened when your bones are discovered centuries later, still clutching a scalpel and that increasingly judgmental rat. The singing stops on day 20. That's when the ship stops again. Not a dead calm this time. There's wind. The sails are full, but the ship won't move. You inspect the rudder. No damage. The anchor? Still tied. The compass? Spinning like a drunk ballerina. You gather the crew. Anyone see anything strange? They laugh. It's not funny, but laughing is all they've got left. Then someone points up. You all follow his finger. There, above the mast, a bird. But not a seagull. Not even something that should exist. Black feathers that shimmer blue. Eyes like molten metal. Wings too wide, too slow. It circles once. Then screams. It's not a sound for human ears. Everyone drops to their knees or claps hands over their ears. A man faints. Another vomits over the railing. The bird vanishes. And the ship begins to move again. Just like that. Historians still argue whether the Caribbean sky shriekers, as a few journals call them, were real creatures or maritime hallucinations caused by moldy citrus and weeks without sleep. But the drawings match. Across cultures, across oceans. Same wings, same eyes, same scream. The fever breaks that night. All the sick men wake up, drenched in sweat, claiming they dreamed a storm made of bones. You don't ask questions. You just give them water and tell them they're lucky. You don't say you dreamed the same thing. Not allowed. The next morning, Bess appears with a bundle. Charms, she says, to keep us tied to the ship, in case we drift. Drift, you ask? In spirit, she replies. Not body. You nod and take yours. It's a knotted rope, a tooth, and a tiny spoon carved from driftwood. It feels solid. You wear it. A week later, the food begins to rot. Not all of it. Only the bread. Only at night. The cook swears he checks it before sleep. Perfectly fine. But by morning, the crust is black. The insides crawl with mold that smells like seawater and something faintly metallic. The crew stops eating it. You ration hardtack instead. And then someone finds a loaf with a bite mark. Too big for a rat. Too small for a man. Winston is cleared of suspicion. Barely. People stop sleeping in the galley. It's little things at first. Bread rot. A mirror that reflects someone behind you who isn't there. Footsteps that stop when you listen. You try to maintain calm. But then, one morning, a crewman is gone. Just gone. His hammock still sways. His boots are by the door. His name? You can't remember it. None of you can. He's erased. Not just missing. Erased. That breaks the illusion. The crew stops pretending everything's fine. They get paranoid, accusatory, superstitious. They demand to see the surgeon. You. Not for wounds, but for advice. What's real? What do we do? Are we cursed? You have no answers. So you lie. You say it's a passing phase, some rare sea madness tied to latitude and diet. You use big words. You pretend you know what's going on. And when they leave, comforted, you collapse onto your bunk and whisper to Winston, "We're so doomed." That night, the phantom ship returns. But closer. No longer on the horizon. Close enough to smell. The scent? It's wet copper and something sweet, like overripe peaches. No sails now. Just tendrils, where the mast should be, moving, flexing, like seaweed in reverse. The crew gathers silently. No weapons. No torches. No one wants to provoke it. It drifts alongside for hours. Never touching. Just keeping pace. Then just before dawn it stops. And sinks. Slowly. Deliberately. The sea swallows it without a splash. Gone. No one speaks. You return to the sick bay. Something is sitting on your desk. A folded cloth. You open it. Inside, a single tooth. Human, but polished smooth like a river stone. And warm to the touch. You drop it into a jar. Seal it. Slide it under your bunk. Don't ask questions. The next day, things go back to normal. If that word even means anything now. Wounds. Fever. Scurvy. All comforting in their familiarity. One man comes in with boils shaped like letters. You bandage him. Another swears he saw a mermaid dragging a corpse by the hair. You tell him to drink water. But beneath it all, something's changed. The ship groans less. The sea feels calmer, but not in the lifeless way it did before. This calm feels earned, like you passed some unspeakable test. You don't ask what the test was. You're afraid the sea might answer. That night you sleep, really sleep, for the first time in weeks. And you dream of nothing at all. A perfect, quiet black. You wake up smiling until you see the rat. Winston, staring at you, not blinking, not moving, just watching. You blink. He scurries back into your coat. You tell yourself he's just curious. But in the back of your mind, one thought whispers. What if he remembers things you don't? You wake to rain tapping the deck like skeletal fingers, soft but persistent, and you think, for just a second, that it's someone knocking. But no one knocks on a pirate surgeon's door. They barge in, bleeding or boiling, or sobbing about teeth that move in their sleep. This is different. Outside, the world's gone gray again. The color leached out of the sky, the sea, even the men's faces. You lean on the railing and watch it drizzle, cold and slow, soaking everything with that specific brand of misery only a sailor can understand. That's when you notice the birds. Hundreds of them, dead, floating, black shapes bobbing in the water, beaks open in silent screams, feathers clumped like wet rope. You can't tell what species. Some are familiar, others not at all. A few look like they were never meant to fly, like their wings were stitched on by someone who'd only read about birds in a dream. The crew gathers in uneasy silence. No one speaks, not even Bess. You all just watch them drift by. Eventually, the wind changes, and the bodies disappear behind you, but not before one slams into the hull with a soggy thunk. You examine it, because of course you do. That's your job. Its bones are hollow like normal birds, but the skull, no beak, just a jaw, human-shaped, teeth, tiny, neat, molar-like teeth. All of them. You toss it overboard and say nothing. That day, a man comes in with a bite. He claims he was nipped while peeing over the side. You raise an eyebrow. He insists. You inspect it. Not a fish bite, not a crab. 2 punctures. Tiny, spaced like a cat's fangs but deeper. Too clean for tearing. Too symmetrical for chance. I think the ocean doesn't like being peed on, he mutters. You wrap the wound and send him off with a stern lecture about modesty and bad luck. Back in your sickbay, you make a note. The sea has opinions. And maybe that's not a metaphor anymore. That night, the stars are wrong. Not just hidden, rearranged. You're no navigator. But even you know Orion doesn't squat over the southern horizon like a drunk spider. The North Star flickers. Not twinkles. Flickers like a bad lantern. Someone swears they saw it blink. No one sleeps well. A man wakes up screaming in ancient Greek. He doesn't speak Greek. You certainly don't. But Bess does. Or at least enough to recognize that what he shouted translates, roughly, to, "Open the gate, and the sea will swallow its own children." She tells you quietly. You nod, then pour the man a sedative. He smiles at you, pupils wide and wrong, and says, "She's beneath us, waiting." You double the dose. He sleeps. You do not. Historians still argue whether these sudden multilingual episodes, especially in seafaring records, were evidence of divine possession, psychosis, or simply undiagnosed brain fever. But in your case, you're leaning toward Eldritch Whisper Campaign. It has a nicer ring. 2 days later, a crewman carves strange shapes into the mast. Not letters, not runes, not anything you can recognize. They're symmetrical, intricate, beautiful, even when questioned, he says he dreamed them. When pushed, he says he had to. You confine him to his hammock and hide the knife. The next morning, 10 more men have etched the same symbols into the hull. Different styles, different sizes, but unmistakably the same forms. They don't remember doing it. You spend hours scrubbing them out, not for superstition, just to feel like you still have control over something. Control is slipping. The charts begin to contradict each other. The sun rises in the wrong place. Your compass shatters spontaneously in the surgeon's cabinet. No hands touched it. Best prays at night now. Not to God, to the sea. You catch her humming the melody from the fever dreams. You say nothing, because you've started humming it, too. Winston won't come out of your coat anymore. At first, you think he's dead. Then one night, you wait to find him standing on your chest, staring down at you like a tiny, furry judge. He sniffs your forehead, makes a soft noise, and disappears again. The next day, you hear him squeak, and a man 5 feet away starts sobbing uncontrollably. You don't ask. You just take his pulse and give him citrus, and hope that helps. The ship slows again. Not stops. Just slows. Every rope heavier. Every step louder. Like gravity's stronger here. You start checking your own weight. Measuring food. Watching shadows to see if they're longer than they should be. They are. You stop measuring. And then it comes. The voice. Not all at once. Just little words. In between the creaks. In the splash of water. In the slap of rope. Closer. Turn. Below. You don't hear it exactly. You understand it. Like a thought that isn't yours. drifting through your head with the audacity of something invited. It wants you to go south. Not a bearing, not a chart, just south. The crew hears it too. They pretend they don't. One man writes on the sail in pitch black paint, "South or die." You consider punishing him. But how do you punish a man for being honest? So you patch the sail and pretend it was a joke. They all laugh a little too hard. One more week and the sickness returns. But not the kind you can treat. This isn't scurvy or dysentery. This is something else. They call it the slither. It starts with a twitch in the left eye. Then your fingers ache. Your teeth feel loose. Your knees bend wrong when you walk. Just for a second, then you're fine. Until you aren't. Two men fall overboard trying to scratch an itch under their skin. One cuts himself trying to let the slither out. It doesn't work. The water accepts them silently. You start checking the crew for twitches. No one complains. They just show you their hands, eyes, tongues. They want you to tell them they're still human. You lie, because what else is there? And then, one night, something answers back. The voice, yes, but now it's not alone. It is echoes. You hear in your bones. The call of depth. You dream of the bottom of the sea. Not just blackness, but pressure. Wait. Time. Something massive and old. Pressed into the ocean floor like a secret. Something that remembers when the sky was soup and the land was teeth. You wake choking. Salt water in your mouth. And your boots are wet. You hadn't left your bed. You hadn't left your cabin. You hadn't left your dream. But somehow, the ocean had reached in anyway. You don't dry your boots. You don't even take them off. You just sit, silent, until the sky lightens and the crew begins to sing. Not shanties. Not songs you know. Just a low, slow hum in unison. No words. Just sound. You join them. You don't know why, but it feels right. The ship moves smoother after that. Almost eager. You check your charts, though you know they're wrong. And finally, after so many weeks, maybe months, maybe more, you see it. The edge. Not of the map. Of everything. A sheer drop in the ocean itself. A cliff made of water. The end of the sea. And something below it. Rising. No one speaks. Not even Winston. It rises like a mountain that forgot it was supposed to be beneath the sea. Not fast. Not violent. Just inevitable. A shifting wall of shadow. Too massive to comprehend. Too smooth to be stone. Too alive to be anything else. The water doesn't boil. It calms. Like it's trying not to wake whatever this is. Whatever it has always been. No birds. No wind. No crew noises. Only breath. Not yours. Hers. Because the crew has begun calling it her, without discussing it, without needing to. She is rising. You feel the ship lean subtly toward her, like gravity's decided it prefers ancient titanic entities to Newton's laws. She's calling us. Bess says one morning, as if it's weather. You don't argue. You simply nod. There's nothing else to say anymore. Language feels too small now. Someone ties himself to the mast, so he won't jump. Another offers his own eye as tribute. You stop trying to rationalize it. You just bandage him and place the eye in a jar of alcohol. Winston watches from your shoulder, tense, tail twitching. His usual judgment is gone, replaced by something colder. Curiosity. Or fear. You're not sure which is worse. That night, the stars vanish entirely. Not clouds. Just gone. A black dome overhead, deeper than night, as if the sky blinked and hasn't opened its eyes again. You light a lantern. The flame burns green. No one comments. The ship drifts without wind. No oars. No sails. No need. She wants you closer. And who are you to refuse? The men start whispering in their sleep. They say her name. You don't hear it with your ears. Not really. But in your chest, behind your ribs, it vibrates. Eashveth, the name feels old. Pre-language. More remembered than spoken. Bess writes it in charcoal on the deck. You don't stop her. You find yourself tracing it on your wrist in your sleep. You try to scrub it off, but it reappears by morning. Faint, like a birthmark, like a promise. On the 29th day, maybe the 30th, she breaches. Not all of her, just nigh. A single, massive by the size of your sickbay door, emerging from the sea's edge. Vertical, slitted, gold like fire seen through oil. It doesn't blink. It just watches. Every man drops to the deck. Some cry. Some scream. One walks forward and drowns with quiet dignity. You don't move. You meet her gaze. And for one impossible second, you understand her. Not in words. In symbols. Feelings. Epics. You see the tectonic pulse of a world still forming. The birth of salt. The death of air. And the memory of teeth. So many teeth. Grinding the first whales into theology. She is no god. She is the thing gods fear. And she is hungry. You fall to your knees. Not from devotion. From sheer biological necessity. Your spine can't hold you up under her gaze. Your breath stops. Your heart stutters. And then mercy. She looks away. The sea erupts with steam. The sky splits. And the ship begins to sink. Not fast. Not violently. Just obediently. Like it's time. Like it was always meant to end like this. The men don't scream anymore. They go still, silent, peaceful. Even Bess closes her eyes and lets the water take her, a soft smile on her face. You, though, you don't go under. Because Winston bites your ear and you wake. Choking, gasping, realizing you're still in your bunk. The ship is fine. The sea is calm. But your boots are wet again. And your wrist? Still marked. The name, Eashveth. Scratched deep this time. With your own scalpel. You don't remember doing it. You don't remove it. Outside, the crew sings softly. You step onto the deck. The eye is gone. But the horizon now curves upward. Not like a globe. Like a spiral. The world is folding inward. And your ship? It's heading to the center. Willingly, you sigh. And return to your sickbay. There's always work to be done. Even at the end of the world. Especially then. Your boots rot from the inside out. Not just water damage. Decay. Like the ship is digesting you. Slowly, patiently. Like a python working its way around a stunned rabbit. The others notice it too. Shirts fray at the seams. Nails fall out of crates. Even the steel tools in your kit, blades you polished every evening, are spotted with rust, mold, something black and furry. Like the ship's been underground for centuries, instead of adrift for days. Your food has lost its flavor. Bread tastes like ash. Salt pork, like wet leather. The rum, like regret, distilled. Only the water stays the same, brackish, but safe. You wonder if that's part of the trick. Keep the prey hydrated while it ripens. The men speak less now. Even the bold ones, the laughers, the whistlers. They huddle on deck at night, staring at the sea. Not into it, at it, like it's staring back. Bess carves runes into the mast. Not for protection. She says it's too late for that. But to leave a record, so they'll know we didn't go quietly, she mutters. She's taken to wearing your bandages like charms. Wraps them around her wrists, her neck, her ankles. Doctor's thread, she calls it. Stronger than rope. You let her. You don't have better answers. You try to chart your course, compass, stars, currents, but the tools don't work anymore. The needle spins. The stars are wrong, and the current pulls only inward, toward something. That night, the ship creaks with language. Not creaking like language. Is language. Long, groaning vowels in timber. Sharp, constant cracks in the rigging. It's speaking. You don't understand it, but your teeth itch. You dream of teeth. Not your own. Not even human. Rows upon rows of spiraled, translucent fangs that smile upward. You wake with a taste in your mouth, salt, blood, and something green. You haven't eaten in hours. When you spit, something wriggles. The ship stops moving. Not like it's anchored. Like the ocean has gone still. Not a single swell, not a breath of wind. Even the sails hang limp, heavy as soaked canvas. You step on deck, half expecting to see the horizon vanish. Instead, it's there. But wrong. You squint. The stars are where they shouldn't be. The constellations are cracked open like eggs. Orion's belt now loops like a noose. The Big Dipper, is missing a handle. Dead water. Bess murmurs beside you, her voice barely a whisper. The sea forgets how to move, and so does time. You lean over the rail. Below, the water isn't just still. It's clear. Too clear. Beneath you, far too deep, is a temple. Massive. Ancient. Alien. Columns carved like bones. Statues with too many eyes. Runes that shift when you blink. And at the center, a heart. Not symbolic. Not metaphor. A literal, pulsing heart. The size of a longboat. Suspended in a glass sphere. Someone or something built around it. Worshipped it. Kept it beating. A rope ladder is already tied to the side. No one claims to have made it. No one remembers lowering it. But everyone sees it. And no one dares touch it. Except Bess. She doesn't ask. Doesn't look back. She just begins to climb down, bare feet, slapping each rung. You follow, because that's your job. You're the surgeon, the one who makes sense of broken things. The descent is slow. The temple gets clearer, but the water never touches you. You're breathing, or maybe dreaming, or maybe just not alive anymore. You reach the floor. Sand doesn't crunch beneath your feet. It sings. A low, organ-deep hum, like the belly of a cathedral. The heart thrums in sync. Lubed up, louder now, louder. Inside the temple, walls are lined with surgical diagrams, but wrong. Dissections of things you don't recognize. Instructions of procedures no human could survive. Tools that resemble your own, but curl at the tips like tendrils. Historians still argue whether pre-Columbian societies ever made contact with seafaring cults, those who bled knowledge from the sea and traded sanity for science. Some think these temples are metaphor, but you're standing in one. At the altar, Bess places her palm on the sphere. It opens like a flower. No glass shards, just an invitation. The heart pulses once, and you feel yours skip. You reach out and touch the edge of the sphere. It's not cold, not glass, not even solid. It's more like skin held under tension, warm, wet, trembling slightly. Your fingers sink in with no resistance, and the membrane parts around you like a sigh. Inside, the heart is suspended in a network of glistening filaments. Veins, maybe, or wires. They pulse with a slow light, alternating red and gold, not flickering. Breathing, Bess stands beside it, her hand still on the heart's surface. She turns to you. Her eyes aren't wide with awe. They're calm, certain, like she's just remembered something she knew long ago. This is where it started, she says, and this is where it keeps starting. Again and again. You approach. The heart is huge, taller than you, not perfectly symmetrical. It has growths on one side, clusters of what look like barnacles or tumors. Some twitch, some blink. You think you hear whispers coming from inside them. One of the veins attaches from the heart and slides toward you, slow and gentle, like a doctor reaching for a patient. It brushes your chest. You feel your own heart stop for one beat, then another, then resume, only heavier. You try to speak, but no sound comes out, only a soft hiss. You look down. The vein has slipped under your shirt, into your skin, not piercing, merging. Your mind floods with images, ships swallowed whole in ancient seas, surgeons in bone masks operating by candlelight on things that wept ink instead of blood, maps that led to organs instead of islands, and always the heart, the heart, the heart, the heart. You stagger back. Bess catches you. They're not asking for help, she says quietly. They're asking for understanding. You don't know who they are. Not yet, but you will. Historians still argue whether the surgeon priests of lost civilizations were real or myth. Some say they never existed. Others whisper that they never stopped. You think of your tools, still in your belt, still polished, even now. They hum softly. In the center of the temple, the heart beats faster. Lubed up, lubed up, lubed up. It's sinking with you. You stand at the edge of everything. The thin line between sanity and oblivion. The pulse beneath your fingers isn't just a rhythm. It's a reminder of life's fragile thread, tangled in a web far older and stranger than you ever imagined. This heart, cradled in its glass prison beneath the sea, feels like a living thing, ancient and watchful, an alien drum calling out to something you can't yet name. You try to steady your breath, but the salty air stings your lungs and your hands shake, not from cold, but from the weight of what you've uncovered. Bess is beside you, her silhouette wavering in the shifting light, whispering about curses that cling to flesh and bone like barnacles on a hull, souls trapped between waves and time, unable to find peace. Being the surgeon, she says, voice low but steady, means carrying more than cuts and bruises. It's carrying the dead weight of every choice, every botched stitch, every life snuffed out under your hands. You glance at her, wondering how she holds such dark knowledge so calmly, but you sense she's learned to swallow her fear like you swallow brine after a rough storm. The temple hums around you, the walls lined with diagrams that twist and writhe like living things. They show creatures you don't recognize, dissected with an eerie precision, surgical tools that curl like tentacles rather than steel. It's a library of madness, medical secrets warped by superstition and desperation. Historians still argue whether pirate surgeons ever truly existed as official crew members or just unlucky shipmates forced into the role by fate's cruel hand. But here, in this drowned cathedral of bones and salt, their legacy pulses in every heartbeat. You feel the weight of centuries pressing on your shoulders, the unspoken pact that those who wield knives at sea are doomed not only to face death, but to dance with madness. The men who wore this mantle before you, did they glimpse the same dark abyss? Did they hear the sea's voice whispering secrets no sane person should know? The line between skill and sorcery blurs beneath these waves, and you realize the price of survival is higher than you imagined. The water around you vibrates with quiet energy, almost melodic but layered with screeching undertones, echoes of screams from men who try to fix what wasn't meant to be fixed, who bled too much or too little, paying the ultimate price. You think of your own shaky hands, the stitches you've made, the wounds you couldn't close, and a shiver runs down your spine. Your role was supposed to be the guardian of life, but here you see the futility etched into every scar. You taste salt and rust on your tongue, a strange metallic bitterness that makes your stomach churn. It's a reminder that no matter how much you patch, sew, and stitch, some wounds run too deep, both on the body and the soul. You remember the tales whispered on other ships, of surgeons driven mad by the endless parade of pain, of desperate remedies born from superstition, of patients left to die because there was no cure. Now, faced with this ancient, unfathomable temple, you understand their despair. Bess breaks the silence, her voice barely audible over the temple's hum. This place is a crossroads, between science and superstition, between life and death, between sanity and the deep, dark sea. You nod slowly, swallowing hard. It's clear this isn't just a physical journey. It's a descent into the very heart of human fear and hope. Your mind drifts to the other surgeons you've known, men and women who patched wounds with whatever they had on hand, who carried the weight of every lost comrade, who faced the impossible with nothing but determination and trembling hands. You wonder if they, too, felt the pull of this invisible current, the seductive call of secrets better left untouched. You feel a kinship with them, a solemn brotherhood forged in blood and salt water. And yet, you also feel the crushing isolation of the role. Unlike the pirates who shout, who drink, who fight, you are bound by silence. You listen to the dying breaths. You stitch the shattered flesh, and you carry the unspoken grief that no one else can bear. You wonder if that is worse than drowning. Noah will come, feeling helpless to stop it, and surviving anyway. The pulse beneath your fingers quickens, almost impatient now. It's as if the heart itself knows you've come this far and demands an answer. What will you do? Repair? Destroy? Or become another lost soul swallowed by the deep? As you stare into the beating heart, you realize that being a pirate surgeon isn't just a profession. It's a curse, a burden, and perhaps a fate worse than any watery grave. The sea exhales around you, a slow, mournful breath that seems to pull the weight of ages from its chest. The heart beneath your hand slows its rhythm, dimming like the last flicker of a candle in a drafty room. The temple dissolves around you, the alien bones and shifting runes melting away like a dream retreating with the morning light. You find yourself alone once more on the endless, unforgiving ocean. Your hands tremble, stained with salt and blood, the surgeon's tools scattered like forgotten prayers across the temple floor. The knife you once trusted now feels alien, an instrument of both salvation and despair. You close your eyes, draw in the briny air, tasting freedom and regret blended like bitter rum. The ship beneath your feet creaks and groans, ancient but still afloat, a reluctant guardian in this world of ghosts. The men aboard begin to stir, their voices returning as if waking from a long nightmare. They murmur about the strange silence, the shifting stars, the temple beneath the waves. Bess looks at you, her eyes heavy with exhaustion but steady, filled with a quiet understanding. Maybe, she says softly, it's worse than drowning because you survived long enough to know how deep the darkness really is. You nod, the weight of her words settling deep into your bones. You wrap the last of your bandages tight, not just around a wound, but around your soul, holding yourself together with thread and hope. The memories of the temple, the heart, and the impossible knowledge it holds swirl in your mind like a stormy sea, threatening to pull you under. Historians still debate the true fate of pirate surgeons, whether they drown, vanish without a trace, or somehow survive, carrying secrets no one else dared to keep. Some say they were cursed, doomed to wander between worlds, their minds fractured by what they saw. Others believe they were heroes, tragically misunderstood and forgotten. But you know the truth is far more complicated, dark, twisted, and endlessly painful. You lean on the ship's railing, staring at the stars above, the constellation still strange and wrong, like an alien map guiding you home, or perhaps to another nightmare. The ocean's endless expanse hums softly, a lullaby for the lost and weary. You feel the ache of every stitch, every failed cure, every life you tried and failed to save. And in that ache, you find a strange comfort, a reminder that even in the darkest depths, you are still alive, still fighting, still human. So, as you drift beneath those strange stars, you realize the cruelest cut of all isn't made by a surgeon's knife. It's living long enough to see the healing never come. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together.